Welcome everyone. Today's review is on a Stephen King compilation, Skeleton Crew. Before I get started, I want to thank everyone that comes here to watch these spoiler-free reviews, whether you're subscribed, or commenting, or liking, or disliking, maybe, or none of those things. I appreciate every view on this channel. Thank you all very much. I want to tell you also that there's no editing here, folks. There's no teleprompter that I'm reading off of. I'm just on the fly with these every time. It's genuine here on my channel. Thank you all for watching my reviews. Skeleton Crew by Stephen King. This is a compilation of 22 stories. One, the most famous of which, is a novella, The Mist. 2 poems and 19 short stories. I will tell you that I almost gave up on this compilation because I didn't particularly care for some of the stories, but I'm glad I persevered. And there are 4 that I'm going to mention particularly here. I'll start off with The Mist. The Mist is a story about a town, the town of Brighton, Maine, that becomes enveloped in the mist. A mist envelopes this town, and anyone that goes out into the mist very quickly becomes annihilated by monsters seemingly from another world. It's kind of fun to maybe think that these monsters are from the world of the Dark Tower. As I was reading this compilation, I was just really wanting a major Dark Tower connection. And I hate to disappoint any Dark Tower junkies out there, but there aren't any. I really looked, I was nitpicking, looking for any little minor thing, and I couldn't find any, but maybe in the mist, those monsters are from Roland's world. In the Mist, the primary part of the plot takes place in a grocery store, and there's a whole drama that takes place between the characters that are stuck in this grocery store as they consider going out into the mist. It's a really solid tale. I will tell you that I didn't particularly care for the ending of The Mist, but I will also tell you that the endings in the novella and the movie, totally different endings, totally different. So if you've done one or the other, maybe you want to do them both, just so that you have a complete knowledge on Stephen King's The Mist. It was also made into a video game, strangely enough. I came across that piece of information. I've not played it, but that's kind of neat. The second one that I will mention here is Beachworld, a hard science fiction short story. Not often do we see Stephen King writing hard science fiction, but he does a wonderful job in this one. Did I say The Mist was my favorite? Maybe Beachworld is my favorite. It's a story about 2 astronauts that are flying in their spaceship above Beachworld, and they crash land. They're hopelessly stranded on Beachworld, and it's a world of sand, and some really strange things begin happening on Beachworld. Sand just begins overtaking their vessel, and it begins absorbing them. It's a really strange but wonderful, wonderful tale. I'm so thankful that I didn't give up on this before I got to Beachworld. If you're reading it and you don't care for the compilation that much, don't stop reading it until you've finished Beachworld. Gramma. Gramma is a story about a little boy left at home to babysit his grandmother while his mother is out taking care of some business. The little boy starts to get a really eerie feeling about Grandma. You see, Grandma is in her bedroom dying, and the little boy starts becoming paranoid, obsessing about Grandma. Is she dead? Is she alive? Is she both alive and dead? It's a really interesting story about a little kid's terror about his grandmother, and it plays out really well. It's one of the better shorts in this compilation. The last one that I'll mention particularly, The Ballad of the Flexible Bullet, the next to the last story in this compilation. It's about a writer and an editor. The writer in this story has a mental illness, and he's paranoid that there are little people living inside his typewriter. He's giving them food, and he's just so paranoid and mentally ill that I actually laughed aloud at one point because he really believes that there's people in his typewriter, and his editor begins to think that maybe there's people in his world, these little people that are just really strange. It's such a strange story that it's almost hard for me to tell you the details in this one. The format is of the editor many years later telling the story about an encounter he had with a writer that was submitting a short story to his publication, and some correspondence between the two where he realized that the writer had a mental illness of paranoia concerning these little people living in his typewriter and terrorizing him and causing him to just have an episode one day that you'll have to read the short story to know about. Stephen King's Skeleton Crew. This is one of my least favorite Stephen King reads. Like I said, I almost gave up on the compilation, but there are some gems in here, particularly the 4 that I mentioned. And if you read it, maybe you'll think that more of them are of value than I felt. But there are certainly 4, in my opinion, that are worth reading in this compilation. Make sure you read those 4 if you don't finish the entire compilation. I give this book 3 stars out of 5. If it weren't for those 4 stories saving this compilation, I may have given this book the lowest rating of any of the books that I've reviewed on my channel. I just felt that some of them were just hard to get through. They weren't very quality in my opinion, and that's why I'm not particularly mentioning them. This is maybe my 35th, maybe even as many as 40 Stephen King reads. You can see my Stephen King bookshelf back here. I'm on a quest to read them all. This is maybe my 3rd or 4th compilation by Stephen King, and it's probably my 2nd least enjoyed, next to The Bazaar of Bad Dreams. That was actually the worst compilation that I've read by Stephen King. 3 stars out of 5, Stephen King's Skeleton Crew. I'm not particularly recommending this one, folks. I just can't recommend it to you. I'm not going to tell you to not read it. I'm not giving it a do not read, but I'm giving it a fairly bad review. 3 stars out of 5. Thank you all for the support that you've shown me by watching my videos. Please subscribe if you made it this far.